Well, this is the greatest president in American history. See, he just carried out a surgical Navy strike on 11 Venezuelan drug gang members in a boat carrying enough fentanyl to kill 20 million Americans. He's like a modern-day Thomas Jefferson killing Barbary pirates. Oh, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio says more strikes are coming. Warships are ready for war with Venezuela. Let's tie some yellow ribbons around our trees because a new war is coming. Maybe there's some babies in incubators as well that we can all rally around, but not so fast, because we shouldn't all just like walk like sheep and believe everything our government tells us. Not so fast. There's a lot of problems with what's about to happen in Venezuela, lots of unanswered questions. President Putin, Russian officials say this was a blatant act, and the United States is exerting itself on other countries. So why exactly is America about to go to war with Venezuela? Did you guys sign up for that? We are not very smart around here. We need some education on exactly what in the hell is happening in Venezuela. And should we buy the government line that, hey, these narco-terrorists coming to the United States, we got to stop them. That's the main story. Colonel Douglas Macgregor is here to explain the truth about what's really going on here and try to help us understand all of this. Colonel, great to see you. Welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you. Happy to be here.
So I'm a little unclear about the truth here. I mean, we're being told the official narrative is 11 terrorists, enough fentanyl to kill 20 million Americans, and we should all just rally around this. Marco Rubio says more strikes are coming. Do you buy this official narrative?
Well, I guess the answer is no. And I'm a friend of Jim Jatras, and it seems that Jim Jatras becomes more and more successful with each interview, and I attribute it to his beard. And he tells me if I grew a long beard, I'd be much smarter. The problem is I couldn't beard if my life depended upon it. So, well,
wiser. You're wiser.
Maybe that's a good prescription for President Trump. I don't know. You're asking the right question. I mean, first of all, by any legal assessment that I can find, this was an extrajudicial execution. This was not something within any sort of legal framework that anybody in the world takes seriously, certainly not within the legal framework of the United States. Equating terrorism and drug trafficking is something that you cannot do with the wave of a hand, which is essentially what President Trump has done. Now, I too have been asking the question, why at this point in time, when the Ukraine war is far from over, there are more people who are going to die over there until we see change in governments in Europe, which I think is coming, fortunately, and that will help. And I think we're going to see another round of warfare in the Middle East involving Israel and Iran and potentially other countries, including Russia and China. So the question is, in view of this, why now? Out of the blue, is Venezuela at the top of everyone's target list? Now, we know that there were people like Elliott Abrams during the first Trump administration who was anxious to go to war against Venezuela and potentially others in Latin America. But why now? You know, we look at oil and gas. We know that they're at the top, in the top three of oil and gas reserves and potential. But the notion that somehow or another this is the driving factor doesn't really pass the smell test. Why? Well, we have thousands of technicians, oil and gas field engineers, people who, if they went back tomorrow to Venezuela, could begin rapidly restoring the Venezuelan oil and gas industry, something that would help the people of Venezuela, but also would be very good for us in the Western Hemisphere. It would make more sense to meet privately with the president of Venezuela and say, we know you've got problems, you've got too much of your population living in poverty. Instead of fighting over this, we could assist you in these areas. These are some areas of interest to us. They also have gold mines and emerald mines. We could certainly benefit from converting some of our currency into gold again, certainly improving our position in that area. I mean, all of these things are swimming around in the back of my mind. And instead of this, we've now identified Maduro with massive drug trafficking. And I think it's also the mistaken notion that the arrival of a couple of hundred people from Russia or China the parking of 2 Russian aircraft on the tarmac down in Caracas is evidence for imminent intervention that's aimed at us by the Russians and the Chinese. It doesn't make any real sense. Maduro, frankly, has very little influence over his own general officers, to be frank. He probably has a little more influence than the president of Mexico has over the Mexican army, which is entirely under cartel influence and control. But, again, why suddenly Venezuela, and why are we interested in destroying the place or invading it? Strategically, there's no benefit to it. And the third order effects are very dangerous. What happens in Colombia? What happens in Guyana? What happens in Brazil? I mean, the effects could be felt all the way to West Africa strategically. All in all, this is not a good idea. So why is he doing it? Is this to divert attention from obvious failures to bring the war to a close in Ukraine? Is this to divert attention from what is coming between Israel and Iran? There's no benefit to us. If anything, you could probably end up with more refugees trying to escape the carnage and find their way north to us, which is the last thing we need. Again, none of it makes any sense strategically to me.
This episode is brought to you by Rumble Premium, the home of free speech and exclusive content from the videos that matter. With Rumble Premium, you get ad-free viewing, access to exclusive shows, and premium features across the platform. We're talking about Steven Crowder's Mug Club, Tim Pool's Timcast, Russell Brand's Raw Commentary, and of course, Redacted, plus tons of other bold creators that you won't find anywhere else. Whether it's breaking news, real talk, or the content that challenges the narrative, Rumble Premium puts you in the front row. Support creators who actually say what they mean in a place that they can say it and mean what they say. Go to rumble.com/premium/redacted to join today. One more time, that's rumble.com/premium/redacted, because truth should not come with a filter. Well, the State Department posted earlier today that they don't care exactly what the United Nations said, because the United Nations has condemned this. Marco Rubio says they don't know what they're talking about. We know what we're talking about. Glenn Greenwald posted about it, and then the State Department removed this tweet for whatever reason. I mean, I guess it's clear that the United States doesn't care what the United Nations says, because we always go against whatever they say. I mean, it's not even a body that enforces anything. But what does this indicate? That the State Department is saying, we're going to do what we want? Is that how you read that?
The world is diverging into 2 principal camps. You saw that recently in China. You saw Modi from India suddenly show up and effectively join hands with Moscow and Beijing. And all because the Indians said, we don't care to be bullied by the United States, because it's in our interest to purchase Russian oil, refine it. We need it. We need the energy. And we're not going to be responsive to this demand that we be anti-Russian or anti-Chinese. And oh, by the way, we would like to bury the hatchet with China. We would rather get along with the Chinese and go to war with them. What I'm saying is there's also a divergence into 2 principal camps that has a lot to do with fiat currency. They want currencies backed by gold. They're looking for tangible, concrete backing for currency. That's the way they want to do business. There are lots of discussions. How will you do this? Will you have a central warehouse where all the gold is stored, and when transactions occur, gold is physically moved from one place to another? How are you going to do this? They're looking at all of this because they see our currency as worthless. If anything, it's a danger to them. The dollar has become a menace. And so this thing called de-dollarization, which has been underway for some time, is now accelerating. The world is running away from our currency because all we do is pass on debt to them. And they don't want to be debt slaves. They don't want to be enslaved by our debt and debt to us. So all of the institutions that came about after the Second World War, the IMF, the World Bank, all these things are now beginning to crumble, and we see new parallel institutions emerging on the other side of the world in the Eastern Hemisphere. The question is, what do we do? Can we go to a gold-backed financial system? Not right now. It's not possible. Then how do we rescue ourselves from a complete collapse of the dollar and a descent into a financial depression, which is arguably the path we're on? I don't think we have any easy answers. There's discussion about digital currency, but only if it's not controlled by the banks and holds real value as a result. We don't know, but the two camps are splitting. There is this divergence, and we are now turning to our affairs in the Western Hemisphere. And I think in the minds of people like Secretary Rubio and President Trump, suddenly doubling down on war with Venezuela is evidence for this new hemispheric focus and is sending a message that if we can't be a global hegemon, then we plan to be the hegemon in the Western Hemisphere. Of course, we're already the hegemon in the Western Hemisphere. Nobody else in the Western Hemisphere is going to spend the kind of money we do on military power. But I think these things are rumbling around in their heads. But the problem is it's all impulsive. If you saw the movement of the flotilla from the East Coast of the United States, its assembly and then movement south, it took far, far longer than originally envisaged. And that's because it's not thoroughly planned. I don't think there is a tightly, well thought out, knitted strategic plan for Venezuela or for anything in the Caribbean right now. I think all of this is, once again, which is very true for President Trump, impulse driven.
Someone in our chat room says, man, guys, get over it. It was just one boat. Of course, one boat leads to many other things. Another person in our chat, Tam McIntosh, says, this doesn't make any sense. The boat was 2,000 miles from the USA and did not have enough fuel to reach the coast of America. And Max Blumenthal, friend of the show and editor of the Gray Zone, tweeted this. This alleged strike on what looks like a common fishing boat will begin a series of criminal deceptions and false flags aimed at destabilizing Venezuela's government. Tren de Aragua was dismantled in 2019. It is gone. Trump's narco-terror designation is cover for invasion and resource theft. I mean, it's not just oil. There's a lot of resources in Venezuela. So, I mean, what do you make of that? It just seems, it all seems so fishy. Your point about the flotilla. What about Tren de Aragua as an actual organization? I mean, yes, we had gangs in the United States, but we're sort of painting this like this boogeyman, that this like this massive Al-Qaeda operation in Venezuela. Is Max right?
Yeah, I think Max is essentially correct. The only thing I would add is that the drugs that do come out of Venezuela come out of Colombia, cross the border, and then are moved from Venezuela elsewhere. Now, some of that comes to the United States, no doubt. Some of it goes to Cuba. There are a number of destinations for it. The real danger, though, because you mentioned it earlier, well, we blew up a boat. We're trying to create a casus belli. In other words, we're looking for an excuse to take dramatic and decisive action against the Venezuelan government to replace Maduro. It's regime change again. That's at the heart of this. Do we have others involved in this ashore? There's evidence that there are mercenary forces in Colombia as well as in Guyana, probably connected to the CIA, that are probably willing and ready to go into Venezuela to destabilize the place with the hope of creating enough chaos that we from offshore, plus our agents ashore, could remove Maduro. Again, this is all nonsense. It's a throwback to a regime change philosophy that has failed repeatedly over and over and over again and produced nothing but chaos. So the real question is, if you're president of the United States and somebody brings this to you and says, hey, boss, this is a really great idea. We're so powerful they can't stand against us. Whatever we do will work. We can sell this to the American people easily. Simply say these people are in the middle of the drug war. We have to crush them. Well, it sounds an awful lot like the argument that the Gulf of Tonkin resolution was based on. It was not true. It was a lie. It was flimsy, but it was packaged and sold successfully. And a lot of Americans are not going to look at the fine print. They're just going to say, oh, well, drug peddlers, drug smugglers, they deserve the worst. Kill them, without understanding what's really going on.
Yes, it's capitalizing on our legitimate outrage about the fentanyl crisis and our immigration crisis. So it's well positioned to succeed if we don't look at the nuance. You're right about that.
That's how false flags work.
I would point out one other thing for your audience. They need to go back and listen to Lee Kuan Yew. He's passed away, but he was the man that created Singapore for all intents and purposes. And he was specifically questioned by the BBC before he died about his policies for drug enforcement. And his policy was very simple. If we catch you coming into or you are inside Singapore, transporting, smuggling, and effectively distributing drugs illegally, we will execute you. And of course, Singapore was near collapse, as was Malaysia at the time. And you know what? It worked. You didn't have to execute very many people consistently before everybody understood what the penalties were. And that addresses something that we don't ever talk about. The problem begins here at home, inside the United States, not in Venezuela. Venezuela or Colombia or anybody else wouldn't have a market if we were not adequately defending our borders, if we were not enforcing our laws, and if we did not make people pay the ultimate penalty. Because one drug salesman, one drug peddler destroys the lives of thousands of Americans. That's what has to stop.
Coming up is the national conversation, a big event that the Colonel will be in attendance. He will be headlining it, really. And I want to play this promo, and hopefully you guys can go and see the Colonel in person. Watch.
The problems America confronts are legion, but it's not too late. Join me, Judge Andrew Napolitano and Natalie Brunell on 4 October in Dallas, Texas, for what we want to be a national conversation that addresses the tough issues that are important to Americans. We want you to participate. If you can join us, be there. If you can't, please contribute. We are a nonprofit. This is just the beginning of an effort that will make America First real again. Thanks.
The nationalconversation.org is the website, and that is October 4th in Dallas, correct, Colonel?
Yeah, it's at the Museum of Flight, which is right on the outskirts. Well, actually, it's still inside the city limits. It's a beautiful museum, and we're going to be holding it there. Food and drinks are free, if that makes any difference. But I think this is a step in the direction of trying to build a foundation for an alternative movement to this thing we call the Uniparty. We've all listened to Elon Musk, and I think many of his ideas are great. But for this to succeed, it has to start at the bottom and work its way up. It has to take the American people into account. We want to hold this for the purpose, not just in Dallas, we want to go all over the country over the next year or so. And we want to hold conversations. We want to answer the questions that are asked, but then we want to know what people in the audience think. We want them to stand up and express their views. This is the only way we're going to build an alternative to what we see in Washington. Because we know, just as you've just pointed out in the discussion today, nobody in Washington is asking any of us what we think should happen, whether it's in the Caribbean, the Middle East, or Ukraine. These decisions are made in isolation from us. We've got to get the American people mobilized. This is what we want to do.
Yeah.
The national conversation, October 4th in Dallas. Colonel, always great to see you. And make sure before October 4th you've started to grow that beard so that by the time people show up on October 4th,
that's going to be
Jim.
But I'll try. I think Jim wins the prize for that one.
For sure. He definitely does. Colonel, great to see you. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Great to see you too. Bye-bye.